Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Earwax. It's Colin, and today we're going to be going over my top 5 indie rock albums of all time. Now, before we get started, I'm just going to say this right off the bat. I don't love indie rock as just like a term or a genre or just like a describer, I guess is the best way to put it. Because I feel like there's so many subgenres within indie rock, and there's so many other like types of rock that could be classified as indie rock, but like can get much more specific within that genre or subgenre. And yeah, I mean, that being said, though, I do think all of the albums I'm talking about today can easily be classified as straight up indie rock. Sure, some of them like may lean a little bit one direction or the other into one of the other many subgenres within indie rock, but I do think it's fair to say all of these are pretty widely regarded as not just indie rock albums, but probably some of the best. Now, I think indie rock's heyday was really like late 90s, early 2000s to like mid 2000s. There's some great albums that came after that. There's some great albums that came before that. And a lot of people will argue about like where the birthplace of indie rock was. I think there's a strong argument to be made that like the Velvet Underground was the first like really big, well-known indie rock band. But I do think at least indie rock as we know it now really got its origin in the 80s. So I think there's a couple albums on here from that time, but the vast bulk of them are from what I consider like the heyday of indie rock. We'll call it like 98 to like 2010 era, I think is like really where indie rock made its mark. Also, as I was going through and doing this list, there was a lot of albums that were like on the top of my head when I was first thinking about this list, that as I thought about it more and kind of like dived down deeper into like the core of those albums, gave them some re-listens, decided not to include them on this list because they fall more into like the indie pop realm, even if it's like indie pop rock. So there's a couple albums that I think like were going to be on this list when I first started thinking about it. But I might do a top 5 indie pop album later, and some of those definitely like are pop rock or indie pop rock, but I'm putting them more in the indie pop than in the indie rock. So I do think that all these albums definitely lean heavier towards rock than any other sound. There's also gonna be, I think, like one album on here that again like is not really even like under Wikipedia classified as indie rock. It's more like dance punk or like art rock, but to me it's one of the albums I associate the most with like that era like of indie rock, and so that's why it's on here for me. So before we get into the honorable mentions, if you guys could please like, subscribe, comment down below what your top 5 indie rock albums are of all time. All that engagement helps out my channel a ton. And without further ado, let's dive into the honorable mentions. So first honorable mention for me is going to be The Suburbs by Arcade Fire. Now this album came out in 2010, I believe. And it was actually the album that got me into Arcade Fire. Not that, you know, Funeral and Neon Bible aren't fantastic, because they are. And I think there's a lot of people that argue like that era of Arcade Fire is really highlighted by those two albums. But to me, The Suburbs is just such a good example of like who Arcade Fire started out to be, and then also like who they end up becoming, because you've got a lot of just kind of like that indie rock, indie pop aspects of their first two albums, but then also some of the more like indie dance and sort of like synth driven stuff that would dominate more of their sound in their later albums. And this album is just the perfect blend of those two sounds. And it's such a good album. I still think it's probably my favorite album of theirs. And yeah, I know it's very highly regarded, but I do think that, again, it doesn't get talked about in the same light as like Neon Bible or Funeral, and I really think it should. Second honorable mention is the one I was kind of talking about earlier, and that's going to be Fever to Tell by Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Now, the majority of this album is like garage rock, art rock, dance punk, but again, I mean, you can make arguments about almost any indie rock album that it has more elements of a different subgenre. Indie rock is a very like broad genre, I feel like. But this one, I think specifically because Maps is just one of those songs that immediately brings me back to like that time in my life and like me getting into indie rock as like a, preteen teen. And yeah, I love this album. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. And it should, I think, honestly be considered in this list because it definitely has a lot of elements that are classically attributed to indie rock. And then my third and final honorable mention is going to be Turn on the Bright Lights by Interpol. This is an album that like my wife actually got me really into. I liked Interpol and like I'd listened to them up until getting married, but she was the one that was like, no, this album is incredible. Like you need to not just listen to it, but like take the time and give it a few listens and really dive in. And I'm glad that I did because it's an amazing album. It's fantastic. The arrangements on this album are incredible. The mix is incredible, and just the songwriting quality is top tier. So that's going to be it for my honorable mentions. Let's dive into the top five. So number five for me is going to be the self-titled debut by Franz Ferdinand. Now, I've talked about this album on this channel before, but I'm going to do it again because it is one of my all-time favorites. It is arguably, I think, one of the best dance rock albums of all time. And yeah, it's like there's a couple songs on here that are just like go-to karaoke songs for me. I love Franz Ferdinand. They've never put out a bad album. Some of their albums haven't quite hit as hard as some of their others over the years, but my favorite will always be this album. Obviously, you've got the big hits of Take Me Out and This Fire, Darts of Pleasure. This whole album front to back is just so good. They do such a good job of blending like sort of like a little bit of like new post-punk feel or like post-punk revival feel with dance rock, but still just like through and through a killer indie rock album. It's fun, it's dancey, it makes you get up and move your feet. And yeah, it's probably, in my opinion, one of the best rock albums like of this era. Coming in at number 4 is going to be another album that I've actually talked about very recently on this channel, and that's going to be Block Party's Silent Alarm. This is an incredible album. Again, another debut album, but just one that is just absolutely incredible. The way that this album listens like front to back is such a masterclass in like track positions. Like it just takes you on such a journey throughout. The highs are super high. I don't want to call them lows because they're not lows, but like the softer points in the record are just gorgeous and just hit you right in the feels. Obviously, again, the big hits off of this are going to be Banquet and Helicopter, but Blue Light, She's Hearing Voices, The Pioneers, like just front to back, this album's incredible. I love that, like, again, this is another one that I think does easily fit into the sort of dance punk category, but not quite as just straight up dance punk as a few other albums that were coming out around this time. And I will actually be doing a top 5 dance punk albums at some point. But this will probably, again, I think this one does lean more towards indie rock on the majority of it. I love Kayle's vocals on this album. I love his vocals in general, but like specifically on this album, I love the energy that they bring. It's just so raw and in your face, but at the same time, like very beautiful and very reserved when it needs to be. And the drums that they achieve on this album are incredible. And yeah, if you haven't watched my video, I did like a short kind of review on this album for one of my favorite album series back for Pride Month. But if you haven't seen that, like go check it out. I gush more a lot about it on that review. But yeah, number 4, Silent Alarm, go listen to it. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Modest Mouse, We Were Dead Before the Ship Even Sank. Now, I know what you're saying. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be screaming at me, even if they don't necessarily put it down in the comments, that their best album is either The Lonesome Crowded West or Good News for People Who Love Bad News. And don't get me wrong, those are both fantastic albums. But We Were Dead is my personal favorite Modest Mouse album. It was the one that kind of got me into them. Dashboard was the first song of theirs that I heard that really kind of just sunk its claws into me and wouldn't let go. But this album, just front to back, I think it's their most fun album. I think it's their most like rock forward album, at least up until this point in their career. And it's just a good time. Even like the kind of more depressing songs on this album are still like very fun to listen to. And yeah, I love just like the baroque aspects in certain parts of this album. I love the really like playful aspects as well. And I think some of just like the songwriting on this album is some of the best in this band's career. March into the Sea, Parting of the Sensory, Spitting Venom. Like, there's so many great underrated tracks on this album. And I personally think it is the best in their discography. I know, again, I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree. I know Lonesome Crowded West is always the one that gets talked about, but I do prefer this album. And it's one of my all time just straight up like favorite rock albums across any subgenre. All right, my second favorite indie rock album of all time is going to be Doolittle by Pixies. Now, again, I think there's an argument to be made that Surfer Rosa like belongs in this conversation. It has my personal favorite Pixies song on it, and Monkey Gone to Heaven. But like Wave of Mutilation, Debaser, obviously Here Comes Your Man. But like this album front to back, it's just such a weird, wacky, wild album while still being incredibly accessible, while still just displaying some brilliant, brilliant songwriting, and really did lay the groundwork along with Surfer Rosa as like one of the quintessential indie albums of all time. And a lot of people have referenced this either like knowingly or unknowingly throughout their careers. Like it's so influential in some of like just the guitar tones and like the song structures and the melodies they were able to create on this album. And yeah, it's absolutely incredible and one of my all-time favorite albums for sure. And my all-time favorite indie rock album of all time is The Queen is Dead by The Smiths. So I don't know if there's a better like 4 album run in rock history, music history than the 4 Smiths albums. It's so unfortunate that Morrissey kind of turned out to be such a self-righteous piece of shit. But at least Johnny Marr is still fucking awesome, and we've got that going for us. I gotta separate the art from the artist on this one because I love these 4 Smiths albums so much, and this one is undeniably their masterpiece. I mean, you've got some incredible songs on here like Big Mouth Strikes Again, There's a Light That Never Goes Out, Boy with a Thorn in His Side. But again, just front to back, like this album is so good. I think it's all members at their absolute best throughout their career. And yeah, this is an album that will never get old. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. They do something really special here. Morrissey, again, he's at like the absolute peak of his game on this album. The guitar tones here, the like just everything they're able to accomplish is just so good. And yeah, I don't know like what else I can say about this album that hasn't already been said for years and years and years and years. Obviously, this album's been out since '86. But yeah, it's there's a reason it's considered like one of the best albums of not just the '80s, but like of just rock music, indie music of all time. If you haven't listened to this album, do yourself a favor, go listen to it because listening to it the first time truly is a magical experience. All right, guys, so that's going to be it for me. Those are my top 5 indie rock albums of all time. Stay tuned for a few other top 5 videos kind of within this realm. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a top 5 dance punk. Going to be doing a top 5 indie pop because there's some albums that I wanted to put on here that definitely like are leaning more towards indie pop than anything else. And I swear I'm going to probably stop doing polls because I really do want to just do top 5 psych prog albums, at least modern psych prog albums. So that video is going to be coming out in the next few months. I got some new reviews coming out soon. Probably next week I'll have at least one and then like another one after that. I know I haven't done like a new album review in a few weeks. I've just been, traveling, and then I'm going to a concert tonight. So I didn't have time to do like a full listen review for an album today. But yeah, stay tuned because all that's coming out. Thanks again for 200 subscribers. I know it's not a ton, but it means a lot to me that there's at least that many of you guys that like are watching and interested in my stuff. And yeah, thanks again for being here. All right. As always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.